You'll remember in the first introductory workshop, we looked at principles of good assessment. Basically, when we're assessing students, we want to make sure that we're being as accurate and as fair as possible because we're making judgments to know them in certain important ways. In other words, can they conduct the types of experiments and activities that we set them in class, in the laboratory? However, there are some common pitfalls that can easily affect our judgment. So I'm going to go through each of these in the following slides. It's not long, it's not difficult, but it's important. The first one is the halo effect. Now in halo, I think you know what that means. And what this basically means is that when we work with students, we develop conceptions, notions about them. For example, if students are always doing very good work, we tend to expect good work. And what this means is if suddenly one of these students puts in a substandard piece of work, there is a natural tendency perhaps to mark it a bit up towards what we expect. Equally, the converse is true. If students generally do very poor work, suddenly they do good work, then we may be thinking, well, what's going on here? So it's really important not to fall into this trap of what people have done prior and what we think they are. We must stick to what they actually are doing. The contrast effect. Now, it's an interesting one. I used to do marking for lots of examination boards. And sometimes you might be marking or assessing several scripts or pieces of work, and they're all generally not terribly good. And suddenly one is quite a bit better. The tendency is to perhaps overestimate that improved one. Similarly, if we're marking very good work and a piece of work is not as good, we may see it as lower than what it is. So really important to stick to the criteria, the standard, and not be influenced by previous assessments that you've been doing at a particular point in time. The contrast effect. Now, it's a difficult one. Sometimes we have students who put a lot of work in and they put a lot of effort in, and we might think, oh, well, let's give them some marks for effort. In fact, if effort is not one of the criteria, then we can't actually give marks for effort. It must be based on the performance and the criteria. Easy to fall into this. Another problem sometimes is we have a marking scheme. It could be a checklist or it could be a scoring rubric, and we're not quite sure what it means, or it might not even be well designed in the first place. So make sure marking schemes that you're using are clear and everybody's agreed about what they mean. Really important thing to get right. And finally, our natural tendency to have preferences. At the end of the day, you've got to stick to the performance. We must not be influenced by issues on race, gender, creed, sexual preference, special needs, or even the football team that they support. So here's some of the key pitfalls that people doing assessment can fall into. Be aware of them, check your own thinking and perception, and avoid them wherever you can.